Hey, what's up my fellow Call of Duty professional gaming elites? Hope you're all having a fantastic week. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over some of the hidden benefits and drawbacks in the most popular attachments in Warzone. And to be honest, I shouldn't have to be making a video like this, because it should all be explained clearly in the game stats and main menu, but for whatever reason, the descriptions and stat bars are extremely misleading, and in many cases they're just flat out wrong, because oftentimes an attachment will say it does or doesn't do something, but then it ends up hurting or improving a stat without warning you, and it's just very misleading. So in this video I hope to clear this up for you guys today, so you'll know exactly what you're getting into when you build your loadout. And of course, if you do end up enjoying this video, I'd massively appreciate a like and subscribe, but if not, that's fine too. I hope you enjoy the video anyway and gain some value from it. And starting with the first attachment on my list, I'm going to talk about the VLK 3x optic, because this actually reduces your recoil very slightly, believe it or not, which is just kind of ridiculous if you ask me, since it doesn't really make much sense at all. And just to prove it to you and show you what this looks like, I've equipped the M4 here with no attachments besides the VLK optic, compared to the base M4, and just started shooting at a wall, which I'll do right now. Alright, so as you can see here with the VLK sight, there is slightly less recoil there on the spray pattern to the right, compared to the base M4 on the left. And even though this might not seem like a huge amount, that extra bit of accuracy, I think, can often give you the edge you need to get a kill on someone who is only exposing their head out of cover. Now, just as a warning, I'll admit when I was testing the results for this by spraying at a wall, I was getting fairly inconsistent results, and what you see here in this clip that I showed you was kind of the best case scenario where I could clearly see a benefit to the recoil spray pattern with the optics. But with my previous testing before I got this result, it would sometimes not seem to do anything for recoil at all, so to be honest, I'm not sure what's going on with this sight exactly, but from what I found at least, it sometimes appears to help with recoil and sometimes it doesn't. And there are other YouTubers and players who have confirmed this finding as well, so it's not just me. And just as an added benefit of using the VLK sight, it has a very minimal aim down sight speed penalty, so it's actually snappier than all the hybrid sights and other zoom in sights that can zoom in over 3 times, with the exception of the Scout optic. But I prefer the sight picture on the VLK, so I tend not to use the Scout for that reason. Okay, now moving on to attachment number 2. And that is to do with the no-stock attachment, because it actually tightens your hipfire accuracy by about 17%, despite there being no mention of this in the menu. And by the way, this also includes the various different variations of no-stock, like the MP5's F-Tac collapsible stock, for example. And, as you can see here, I have the default M4 equipped with no attachments. But as soon as I put on the no-stock attachment, you can see that the hipfire area is noticeably tighter. And if you're using an SMG, for example, like this, and you start stacking the no-stock attachment up with other hipfire improving attachments, you can just really turn it into a close-range spray machine. And by firing accurately from the hip and not having to aim down sight straight away, you can move around much quicker while shooting, which makes it harder to hit you. By the way, this only works for close range, and I would not attempt to hipfire someone past about 15 meters, so just bear that in mind if you do try to do this. Okay, and now on to attachment number 3. And this is almost like the opposite of what I just told you, because if you're using the longer barrels compared to your gun's standard barrel, this actually worsens your hipfire spread by a considerable amount. On the M4, for example, as you can see here, I'm currently equipping the default M4 with no attachments, but when I switch to the Grenadier barrel, which of course is the longest one, the hipfire area is noticeably worse, because it's, as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger. Now, when I found this out, for my SMGs in particular, I decided to not equip the longest barrel as much, since I often like to hipfire with SMGs and run and gun. But on all the other guns, like the assault rifles, LMGs, and snipers especially, you definitely want to be using the larger and longer barrels, because you won't be hipfiring that often, so I wouldn't worry about it too much on those. Now, before we move on to the next attachment, I do want to mention that the monolithic integral suppressor barrel on the MP5 does not worsen your hipfire, so I just want to make sure that's clear for you guys, since that's a very good attachment and you definitely want to be running that on your MP5. And this leads us nicely and conveniently into attachment number 4, which is all to do with the MP5's integral monolithic suppressor, which I just mentioned. Because in and of itself, this is probably one of the most popular attachments in the game as well, just because of how strong the MP5 is in Warzone. And for some of you out there, you may not know why most people tend to use the integral monolithic suppressor barrel over the regular monolithic suppressor, but the reason is because the integral suppressor actually gives the MP5 plus 18% to damage range and plus 25% to bullet velocity, whereas the regular monolithic suppressor only gives you about 10% more to damage range and 15% more to bullet velocity. Right, okay, so the bullet velocity part isn't really that important since we're using the MP5 mainly just for close range, but the extra damage range on the integral suppressor is a noticeable improvement and can mean the difference between taking 1 or 2 extra shots to kill someone at those closer ranges. So it's definitely a good improvement, and it's why most of the top players use that over the regular monolithic suppressor. Okay, so next on this list we're gonna go over the Merc Foregrip. And did you know that it actually improves your movement speed by about 3.7%? Now, it only increases your base movement speed, mind you, so that's when you're just running around, not while you're aiming down sight and moving. But even still, I think this kind of makes the Merc Foregrip pretty overpowered, especially on SMGs, since it already gives some other really beneficial stats like better hipfire and better vertical recoil control. So even when I didn't know that it had this hidden speed boost, I was still using it a lot over the other foregrips, and now after knowing that it has this speed boost, I'm just using it even more. And speaking of foregrips, whilst we're here, the commando foregrip in the main menu says it only reduces your base movement speed, but it actually also penalizes you the most in aim down sight walking movement speed as well, which is how fast you can basically strafe left and right while you're aiming down your gun. Now, if we compare this to the Ranger foregrip and the Merc foregrip, which are grips that also penalize your aim down sight movement speed, these have a penalty of just 8%, but the Commando foregrip penalizes you by 14% in aim walking movement speed. So just bear that in mind in case you're trying to build a class for good strafing speed, which is honestly a very underlooked stat in my opinion, and it's pretty important in medium range gunfights. Alright, so now let's talk about the monolithic suppressor, which is the most popular attachment in Warzone alongside the extended mags, because it increases your damage range whilst also helping to keep you off the radar when you shoot. But another hidden benefit of the monolithic suppressor that not many people know about is that it also helps boost your bullet velocity by about 15%, which makes it just a tidbit easier to hit those moving targets at longer ranges. And just from all these benefits of running the monolithic suppressor, I think it makes it very overpowered compared to the other normal suppressors, because the only benefit you would get from using, say, the tactical suppressor is you'd get a slightly faster aim down sight speed, and the lightweight suppressor in particular just isn't worth mentioning at all, because it lowers your damage range and bullet velocity by so much, whilst only giving a slightly better aim down sight speed compared to the tactical suppressor. And in Warzone, I pretty much see no one using the lightweight suppressor, just because of how terrible those stats are. So I think a great way to improve it would be to make it give you a movement speed boost, kinda similar to what the Merc Foregrip does. Because at the moment, even if the lightweight suppressor was the only attachment I had locked for my gun, I still wouldn't be using it. And I just realized that's probably the most times I've said suppressor in one sentence, so that's probably a new record for me. But anyway, just before we wrap up this video, I'd like to quickly mention the 5mW laser versus the 1mW laser attachments, because I've heard some people being a bit confused about whether there's a difference in hipfire accuracy between these two attachments. And just to clarify this with you, the 5mW laser does in fact give you slightly better hipfire accuracy than the 1mW laser attachment. And I know this might have been obvious to some of you more seasoned Warzoners, but in the menu stat bar it might not be that apparent, so hopefully if you didn't know that before, you know now that the 5mW laser gives better hipfire accuracy than the 1mW laser attachment. And just before I sign out, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, but if not, that's cool too. I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, thanks for watching guys. Hope to see you in the next video, and stay safe. Bye.